everybody. Today's video is going to be an extreme Grinch design where the Grinch is up on the top of Mount Crumpet riding down with a sleigh full of everything that he's taken, and Max is out front. If you turn the nail around and you look at it from the finger going down, you can see the little entrance to his cave on Mount Crumpet, and everything about this design is extreme and over the top and crazy. This design is just like, it's one of those that I had in my brain. I'm like, do I really want to do this? Is this going to be too much? And no. If it's Grinch, it's never too much. So I hope you guys love it as much as I do. If you are a Grinch fan like we are, I have plenty of past Grinch videos, and I will put links to all of them in the description box below. So check out those, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
So we are going to begin this design with a layer of white acrylic. Now the great thing with this one is because there is so much built up on top of it, there's no need to encapsulate, there's no need to file. Basically just get a coat of white on there so that there is a base. Once that is done, you can go straight into doing the art, which is awesome. I rarely have a design that I don't feel like I need to file it. And whenever I do, on those rare occasions when it happens, it is like, I don't know, I feel like I have so much extra time, which is ridiculous because the amount of time that I put into this design as a whole was just crazy. Probably 5 hours all together, I would say. But just is so funny because it seemed like such a huge bonus to not have to file it. But on our nail form backing, we're going to go through and we're going to sculpt the entrance to the Grinch's cave on Mount Crumpet. So it's a black doorway and then a gray kind of like stone structure going around it. Once that has cured, you're going to glue that onto the nail, right? So it's almost like the doorway is facing the finger or facing the cuticle area. You don't want to leave much space, just a tiny little bit of space on the other side of the doorway. Make sure you fill in any weirdness with some more of those colors of acrylic, both the gray and the black. If at any point you're like, I wonder what color acrylic that is, I will have all the colors of acrylic listed in the description box below. So if you have any that you're curious about, check there, you will find your information. So now with just huge amounts of white acrylic, we're going to be building up this nail so that it creates a slope from the top of that doorway, the stone structure of the doorway, to the tip of the nail. Huge amount of acrylic. It was like, I don't know. I felt like I just kept needing more and more and more and more, and I kept adding just these huge beads, biggest beads I could pick up. Eventually we do get that. We do get the amount that we need. And then after you have that, you're going to kind of pull it down and around the front of the Mount Crumpet doorway so that it looks like there's icicles and snow dripping down. After you have it, done to the point where you're happy with it, smooth everything out, make sure that it's looking the way you want it to look. At this point, if anything just looks way off to you, go ahead and file it. You never know what's going to happen. So if you feel like you need to, don't be hesitant about filing it at that stage. But beforehand, definitely not necessary. So now we're going to be sculpting all of our sleigh parts on a nail form backing. Now, it's one of those things where the Grinch has all of these different styles. There's so much fan art over the past 50 years practically that actually it's more than 50 years. It's like 70 years. Goodness gracious, the Grinch has been out a long time. There's so much fan art revolving around the Grinch that the actual what the Grinch is, a lot of people's image in their mind isn't exactly the right thing. Like there's just these teeny tiny differences. Is this sleigh gray? Is this sleigh black? Does this sleigh have any decorative, I have those little yellow like curly cues. Does it have those? Does it not? Does the Grinch have white buttons, white poofy buttons on the front of his shirt or jacket, his Santa coat, or does he not? There's like a gazillion questions. What color thread is the string around the horn on Max's head? Is it red or is it black? Like I said, so many questions. The great thing is, because nobody, unless they look it up, knows the answer to these questions, you can have some fun with it and you can do it how you want to do it. So the Grinch, from what I remember, does not have any decorative elements on his sleigh whatsoever, but I like them. So I added those little yellow or gold curly cues to the front of my sleigh just because I thought it would be a really pretty element and just, add a bit more pizzazz. If you want to try to be true to the classic, don't do that part. Skip it, go through, really look at either the book, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, or watch the movie again. We all need an excuse to watch that movie again, at least if you're me. But, take note of those. Otherwise, if you like the freedom that this particular style allows, then just run with it and do what feels like the right choice to you, which, I think is personally the more artistic route. So up to you, do whatever makes your Grinch heart beat. So we've got our sleigh pieces all made, and now we're going to start assembling them. So we've got the base of the sleigh, that rectangle, the little part that kicks up where he's leaning down on it on the front of the sleigh. You've got the, the skates. That's probably not the word. Oh, that's so funny. I don't know. Those big runner parts on the bottom of the sleigh that make it float on top of the snow, like the snowshoes or skates, whatever you want to call them. Those things on the bottom. Skis? Is the word skis? Somebody's going to know this and they're going to help me out in the comment section. So whoever that is, thank you. You helped me out significantly here. We're going to glue those to the bottom. We're going to glue on those yellow decorative curlicues. And any place that you glue something on, you're going to want to follow that up with acrylic, whether in one of the colors that you're using. So for me, on the curlicues, I'm going to use that yellow again, or on the sleigh parts. Otherwise, I used brown. If it looks pretty good and there's no color discrepancies where you don't feel like you need to use the color that you used, clear is always a valid option. I'm also going to take more of that yellow and add just a little bit of a trim right across the front of the sleigh. Not too much, you don't want to overdo it, but just like a little connector from one curlicue to the other curlicue. Back to our nail form backing, we are going to be sculpting the parts of the Grinch and Max. This is the part where you can really have all of your hard work go south, and most of it really comes down to sizing and proportions. If you already have your sleigh completely done, then I would recommend having it close by so that your eyeballs can dart between the sleigh and the Grinch, the sleigh and Max, Grinch and the Max. You can look really quickly between all of these parts and you can answer the question in your head, does everything look like it is the right size? And as long as that answer keeps being yes, fantastic. Give yourself a pat on the back and keep going because you are on the right track. If all of a sudden you're like, you know what, those Grinch legs look really long. How did that happen? Take the time now to correct it. If at this point you're thinking everything looks right and later on it looks wrong, you can fix it then too. But if you can catch it early, that's just better. Because it doesn't take that long just to sculpt the little bases of the Grinch legs. But if you don't realize the legs are, way too long or too thick or whatever it may be until at the end when everything is assembled, it's a lot more of a process to correct it. So for our Grinch, for the individual pieces that we need to make in profile, you need to make a head, neck, and body with the hat. And then you need to make his legs and his arms separately. Do not sculpt those arms and legs on him right now. Sculpt them off because you can't add those until his body gets rounded out and plumped. Now we're going to start doing our Max. When you're doing the Grinch, he's got the classic green colors of his fur and the red hat. Our Max has brown tones for the most part, and then he's got yellow on his horn, and he's got gray for the little, or I guess the big loop that hooks him onto the Grinch's sleigh. So he's got his legs, same thing. Do not sculpt these where they're touching his body. In profile, you need to do his head, neck, pinched body, and tail, and then do all 4 legs separately. So the reason we're doing the legs separately is the same as the Grinch. Before you add those legs on, you need to be able to plump his body. So you need to just do them separately and keep them in a safe place so that they don't get blown away by a sneeze or something. Actually, that happened to me once. I was working on something and I sneezed like totally out of nowhere. Like it attacked me and it shocked me. And I lost pieces from the velocity of my sneeze. It's real. It happens. So we're going to take yellow and we're going to be adding Max's horn. Make it large. This is one of those times when, just like before, keep track of sizing and proportions, but just make sure that you don't make that horn too small because his horn has to be huge. It's what shrinks him into the snow. Now going back to our Grinch, we're going to work on him for a little bit. Leave all of your Max pieces to the side. Leave them on the nail form backing until you're ready to work on them. That's probably the best place for them to be so that they don't fly away. Or if you have like a little, a clean dappen dish, that's a great place to store pieces of a project that you're working on. It keeps them all together. It's small, so nothing gets lost in it, not like a Tupperware or something that'd be way too big. And the fact that it's clear, I personally think helps because you can see what's in it a little quicker than if you have to like look up and over something. Anywho, back to our Grinchy. We're going to be adding all of his details, all of his thickness, all of his plumpness. When you are sculpting the Grinch, so this is another thing. When you're looking at the Grinch, in the illustrations, you always just see him from one angle and the perceptions don't necessarily add up. There's different looks to him from each angle that that don't always seem like they make sense. The view of him from profile, he's always got like this jutting out lower jaw, like a really bad underbite, and you don't see that necessarily from the front. And there's just these different little discrepancies that happen. So if you have any of those issues and you don't know how to correct them, look at some sculptures. There's so many different little Grinch figurines out there that if you grab one of those, it might give you some better ideas on how to sculpt him in a 360-degree fashion. But once his body and his face and neck have all been filled out, then you're going to glue his arms down. See, the reason you couldn't glue them down before is because they don't sit on that tight middle line of the Grinch body. They sit on his shoulders, which are out away from there. And we didn't have that space ready for them yet. Plus, this way, you get to really kind of make him as you go, and you get to see exactly how the arm placement should be. Once you have the arms done and they're all filled out and secured to the Grinch, you can add a little more detail to his hat, fill that out a little bit. If you wanted to at this point, you could go through with white and you could add the little bits of like the puffs around the hat and on the top of the hat. If you wanted to do that now, absolutely go for it. I personally decided to wait and do all of it at the end so I could do around his shoes and everything, which I haven't gotten to yet. But sometimes, and I do this sometimes, I like to be able to finish something, and I like to, like for instance, the hat, just to be able to finish it. It's a sense of accomplishment. And if that is something that would give you some encouragement to keep going and keep this project fresh and interesting to you, even though it probably takes the same amount of time no matter which way you do it, and as far as, really the end results, it doesn't matter. Sometimes just getting a part of something done really makes a huge difference. So if that helps you, go for it. Otherwise, we're going to be adding the red acrylic around his body is it a coat? Is it a shirt? It's the Santa top. And then we're going to be adding his legs. Now, before you glue the legs on, I didn't show you doing this in the video, but you're going to stand him on the sled. So you're going to hold him up to the sled to get the angle of the legs right. Make sure that you do that. Don't skip that particular step because you never know, does he have to be upright more? Does he haunched more? What's going to make him look like he is leaning down this sled going down Mount Crumpet full speed? You just have to kind of play around with it a little bit to get the angle right. So then after you have the legs glued on, as you can see, secure them with more green, and then take red and add his little booties. That's another thing. Sometimes he doesn't have little booties. Sometimes he does. All these discrepancies. And I actually love it because it gives us some freedom. But after you have him essentially done, at least to this stage, you can go ahead and glue him onto the sleigh, and then you're going to want to secure his feet to the sleigh with some clear acrylic. Don't skip that step. Don't allow the nail glue to reign supreme. You want to make sure that there is some clear acrylic to really hold everything together. Now we're going to go through and basically repeat the entire process with Max. So we're going to be adding more depth to his head, to his body. Make sure that on the body that you really keep that middle section nice and pinched so it looks like his harness is really way too tight. And this poor little puppy is just so miserable. Going to be adding more detail to the body on the other side. Keep everything 360. So when I say 360, I mean you need to be able to view it from every perspective. No matter which direction somebody's looking at the snail, it should look finished, complete, and like you as the artist assessed it for every final detail. You shouldn't ignore any spots just because, well, nobody's going to look at it from that angle. That's not the case with this design or with any design that's in this particular style. You want to make sure that it is completely viewable from any perspective. After you have his body all filled out, you can go ahead and glue those legs on. Glue them in place. Once they're glued in place, just like with everything else, we're going to secure them with more of that tan or brown acrylic. Flip it over, do the same on the other side. Working on Max was a little bit more awkward for me than doing the Grinch because I'm just holding on to that teeny tiny little loop and there was not quite enough space. So some of the filming seems a little bit uncomfortable just with flipping him around. But then with red acrylic around that area of his body that is cinched, you're going to add the harness that's circling him a bit too tightly. You're going to want to glue on his ears. So with a darker shade of brown acrylic, you're going to sculpt his ears on a nail form backing and then just glue them in place. And then you guessed it, secure them onto Max's head with more of the darker brown acrylic this time. Do that for both sides. And then once we have those pieces done, we have the Grinch done, the sleigh done, and Max done. You can glue them onto the nail, and that is so satisfying. It is probably the best moment of this nail aside from getting to look at it and relish in it at the very end. So we're going to glue our Grinch down on the sleigh. My nail glue was disagreeing with me pretty significantly, and so I'm going to just set the nail down so I can really hold it and stabilize my hand until that's going to set up. Once he is glued down nicely, secure it with some clear acrylic to make sure it's not going anywhere. Because after you struggle to get it glued down, you don't want it to just fall off on you. That would be very disappointing. And then you're going to glue Max in place. I like to have nail glue on my nail form backing on the side in a little puddle so I can dip into it. So I dipped all 4 of his feet. And then after he's been glued down, you're going to want to secure him with clear acrylic, which I know is just absolutely shocking to everybody. So we're going to take some wire now that we have all of that done, and we're going to be adding his whip. So cut a little piece of wire and glue it to the place where his hand will be, and then add a little more green acrylic around the wire, and then take a piece of black thread and glue it to the other hand. So the one hand is where he has the whip, where he's, encouraging Max to keep going and go faster. And the other hand has the leash. And so we're going to be securing the leash hand with the other hand on the other side, and then with your black thread with another piece, you're going to glue that to the end of the wire for the whip. And then after those have been glued down, you're going to take some more and you're going to just add a little bit of clear acrylic to the end of that piece of thread to make sure that's not going anywhere, and then wrap the black thread around the horn. So he's got a couple places where he's holding on to Max. He's got the horn, and then he's got the silver or the gray ring that's on Max's back, and that's attached to the sled. So the Grinch is holding Max both around the horn and around the middle. So he's really making sure that Max isn't going anywhere. So for the one that's through the hole in the silver loop, my silver loop broke off. I fixed it. I added the string going through it and attaching to the slate, but for some reason I don't have video of it. So I apologize for that. So back to a nail form backing, we're going to be adding this, the bag of toys. Now, there's some discrepancies because the look on the Grinch's face, you'd think this would be at the point of the movie where he's just started stealing gifts. But I did want him to have the gift bag and have it be, at least somewhat full. So this is probably in a part where he is going from house to house, but then he won't be by Mount Crumpet. Like I said, there are some discrepancies. Why am I pointing these out to you? I don't know, because I could have just left them go, but yet I felt I was obligated to share these. So we're going to be making the sack of presents, even though he's at the top by Mount Crumpet. It all works out. So with gray acrylic, make an uneven, not so pretty bag shape. Make sure it is open at the top. It doesn't have to be smooth. If it's a little lumpy, that's probably even better. So just let the lumps happen. And then after you've got that done, you're going to need to sculpt a little bit of stuff coming out of the top of it. You can just do some, generic blob shapes like I did. If you really wanted to go all in and just have fun with it, the Grinch usually has some instruments and a Christmas tree and different things in his sleigh. That would be a level of detail that I would just be so impressed with. So here we go. Here's the part where we add the rest of the attachment of Max to the sleigh. I reattached that little silver gray loop though, so we did get that on there, just with more nail glue. It wasn't a big deal. But we're going to glue that piece of black thread around the silver loop. So make sure that gets glued down, hold it in place until it's glued. And then you're going to take and you're going to glue the other side of it, the other end of your thread to the sleigh. Just apply a tiny bit of nail glue and then secure everything with clear acrylic once the glue has set up enough. So there's the clear acrylic for the loop, and there's the clear acrylic for the sleigh. Cut off extra thread from both the whip and that leash portion. Once we have that done, you're going to take your white acrylic and you're going to be adding the trim. When you're adding the trim, I did mine in tiny beads and did individual beads to create that more puffed shape instead of a furry shape like the Grinch usually has. So we're going to be doing individual beads of that white acrylic going around, leave a gap between all of them, and then do a second circle, filling in the gaps. This way you'll have a little more texture instead of just doing them right next to each other because they will morph together. Add the bit to the end of his hat, and then you're going to want to do the same around his neck, around his sleeves, and around his feet. So here we are doing his neck, the collar of his Santa outfit. And this is something that I've always thought, I don't know if anybody else agrees, I have always been so impressed with the Grinch's intelligence and creativity, both in the original movie and in the Jim Carrey version. So in the original movie, he sews this amazing thing. He has a sewing machine he knows how to use and all this stuff. It's just always so impressive to me. So maybe I'm on my own there, but I've always been in awe of his ingenuity. which is probably part of the reason why I like him so much. So after you have all of that white done, then we're going to go through with some acrylic paint, and we're going to be adding any details that are remaining with that acrylic paint. So I always feel like my red acrylic isn't as bright as I would like it to be. And so I like to go through and I like to paint over the top of it with some really bright red acrylic paint, which is what I'm doing here, just to give it a little more pizzazz. And then I'm going to add some more brightness to the white, everything I sculpted with white just there, all of those trim pieces with some white acrylic. So go through and add all of that around every little bit that I added the poofiness to. So once all of that has been done, you're going to want to go through and add facial features and details of that nature, any outlines that are necessary. There's really just so much detail that is available to add to this that keep looking at it, you'll keep seeing things, especially like the original Grinch illustrations and like the original Dr. Seuss Grinch book. There is this little fine black outlining, and this is the case, or shading. It's like a cross stitch or cross hatch for the shading, which is so beautiful. And whenever I'm painting the Grinch, I usually like to add that in. So that would be a choice that you could make if you wanted to do that on the 3D version like this. The reason I did not is because it's hard to tell exactly where to place it, because you're looking at the Grinch from all directions and you're not necessarily shading it in the same way you would do it if it was in a 2D perspective. But the 3D element where you can see him from different angles, depending on the angle, those little black crosshatches may seem inappropriate. But if you wanted to do them, it's always a style that I personally love, and I would love to see how it turns out. So if you do decide to do it, please share a photo with me. Even if you don't decide to do that and you're just making something cool with the Grinch, I want to see it, so please share it with me. No matter what, even if it's not nail related, if it's Grinchish, I would love to see all of it. So yeah. Then we're going to go through on the bag. The bag of his stuff that he collects from all of the Who's houses seems to be a bunch of different bags attached together. So we're going to be adding the little outlines of the individual bags. Go back through, add more details to his face. You can do shading if you want to, or not, up to you. Make sure that you do give him his yellow eyes and his smile. Give him a little bit of some fur lines on the side of his face to make him look a little bit, I don't know, fluffy, I suppose. And then just basically anywhere you see something that you feel you need to add it. On the entrance to Mount Crumpet, I added some cracks in his rock with just some black lines. Once you're happy with all your painting, apply some gel sealer over the snow so it looks shiny and fresh and sparkly. And then once that is done and that has been cured, you can apply some matte top coat to everything that is left, basically. So you want to apply that matte top coat to anything that has been painted, which in my case is pretty much everything. So you've got the sleigh, you've got the sack of presents, you've got the Grinch, you've got Max, and you have the entrance to his cave home. So just make sure everything gets a nice coat of matte top coat. Apply a regular matte top coat, not a gel matte top coat. It'll just leave your 3D art looking a little more detailed, and it gives a better result. So there it is, you guys. I love this one. Like I said, this was a huge time commitment, and I am so glad he turned out as completely adorable as he did. If you decide to make anything as far as a recreation goes, like I said a million times before, I would love to see it. So please do share it with me, and I will see you guys all next time. Merry Grinchmas!